Now, I have a special guest tonight, and I want to bring him on because he's one of those representatives that we were talking about. We need to be talking to our representatives. We need to be bringing these ideas to our representatives so that they can represent us, because that's the whole point of it. The whole point of representative government is that we have these conversations with them. Don't just like every 4 years or so you like, well, I heard his ideas, I hope he's good and I hope it works out, and if it doesn't, well, no, we have to have these conversations, and this is the whole point. And this is the idea. So tonight, of course, I'm bringing in Brent Chapman. He's a MLA candidate for Surrey South, and I've been looking forward to this conversation for some time. And well, let's just add him to the stage and bring him on. And Brent Chapman, thank you for joining me today.
There he is. I took my tie off.
Oh, the tie's gone. I like it.
Tie's
I have
gone.
a no tie policy.
Heads up, guys. Heads up, guys. It's
Nice.
a good friend of mine. It's one of his. It's his brother. He lost his brother to suicide, and he's put so much of his effort into raising money for Heads Up, guys. He's raised a lot of money to keep this going because mental health is really important at this time.
Absolutely, it's really important. I mean, it's important time. I wish it was more important before we lost so many people, but we have no excuse. We got to keep talking about it. We got to keep having these conversations. I know they're tough, but that's yeah. Kudos for the effort.
Yeah, well, I heard some of the things that you were talking about before, and I'm glad I tuned in because, boy, I'll tell you, it's not very lighthearted. You get into all the heavy stuff. It's good.
I like getting into that.
Yeah.
I think it's important, and I think at the end of the day, like I'm more of a first principles kind of guy, where I like to see what's happening right now and then break it down to, well, what's the core concept, what's the core principle behind this, and is this something that we want in society, or does this fall along something that we should be rejecting? And of course, if you can break everything down to the core principles, then you can use the Socratic method to see if these are the things that are things that we can accept in society, or these are things that we should reject. And fundamentally, this whole left-right divide, or tribalism, whatever you call it, I do chalk it up to the idea of authoritarianism versus liberty, and there's a real push for authoritarianism right now, but there's also equally a lot of people waking up to the concept that liberty is what we really want, and this is what we need to fight for, and they'll take it from us because default is authoritarianism.
Yeah, I think the thing that we miss sometimes is how much is constitutional as opposed to parliamentary or legislative. That we have, we've settled on constitutional issue or constitutional, what's the word I'm looking for, kind of barriers that we think are sort of in place. But we don't really have a right to property, and we don't have the same right to free speech that they do in the United States. We don't have a First Amendment. We are really at the mercy of Parliament if someone's going to let us speak. And we should push for constitutional changes and say these are the things that we want and we demand them. I suggested to someone that we need another Magna Carta, that we need to start again and rethink the relationship we have with authority. Period. Because like you just said, these governments come and go, but there's a permanent government that sits there, and they have an awful lot of sway, and it gets more and more now as we go. I talk about the fact that the Prime Minister of Canada doesn't swear an oath to the Canadian people. He swears an oath to the Queen and her heirs, but also to uphold the secrets of the Privy Council. I'm not even sure exactly what that means, but for us to think that this person is representing us, they've got to prove that, because it's not there in the oath. Whereas the American president swears to defend and uphold the Constitution, and that's his job more than anything else. That's what everybody lives under.
Well, and one thing that I admire about the American system is that the Constitution itself is written in a way, it's a statement to the government from the people to say, these are our rights. They're inalienable rights. You cannot infringe on those, and we won't accept that. So here's a set of rules that you cannot infringe on.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal. I mean, the founding fathers created something. They drafted something that the world had never seen before. They said when Washington passed authority over to Adams, it was the first time in the history of mankind that the leadership of a nation was handed down without bloodshed or death. That it was actually it was done civilly by by people, but the actual leadership, not some sort of not just underneath a king, but the actual leadership of the country was peacefully transferred. And so yeah, it changes the way we look, change the way the world look at freedom and free people, and like you said, liberty. But are we prepared to go to to go to what it takes to get that? Because government and that power, from what I can see, is very intoxicating. I mean, for these people to think that they can be like a god on earth and fix everything up, but at what cost?
Well, that's the sad part about it. It's really the fallibility of humanity at the end of the day. Humans will always think, well, oh, if I do it, I'll do it differently, right? The whole
Yeah.
socialist experiment thing. Every good socialist thinks that as soon as they get into the position, they'll be able to do it better, and they'll be they're the good guy. They're not the bad guy that came before. But I would always say that every socialist went in with the right ideas. It's just they had to break a few eggs, so to speak, along the way, and then, well, I've already broken a few eggs. Well, how's another 6 million eggs, right? It becomes a case where they're so ideologically driven that they're willing to make all these sacrifices. It's not, as long as it's not themselves, right? It's always other people that need to be sacrificed.
Yeah, they said that socialist isn't for the socialists, it's for you, right? Socialism isn't for the socialists. You have to live with socialism. But I would say that it's my analogy is that they're gonna jump out of the window again, but this time they're gonna fly, and they keep trying it. It never it just does not work, and it never has
Well,
worked.
Pinochet helped with that when his helicopter rides away. That's a
That'll
joke,
do it.
obviously. Um, but no, but this is the concept, right? So, and I think the founding fathers in the United States figured this one out. They realized, and there was like thoughts of this through the French scholastics, and they weren't the first to even conceptualize this, but the idea that you know power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so we need to set up a system of governance where, yes, there are people that are going to be democratically elected for the role, and they're supposed to be representatives, but let's break up the powers so that they basically don't have a lot on their own, that they're not able to do a whole lot. They just have whatever role that they're given, and then that's it. I think over decades and decades and decades, we've been working at amalgamating powers and bringing them closer to a central authority again. You're seeing this attempts at this in the United States. Of course, their documents are so much better, more robust to thwart this. But in Canada, I mean, how much power is in the PMO? I mean, we
Everything.
even had this week we had the premiers all getting together, left and right, saying, "Hey, would you stop trying to run our provinces? We have a job to do. Would you stay out of our affairs?" The PMO thinks that they're a dictatorship.
Well, they say that the Canadian PMO, the Prime Minister of Canada, is the most powerful leader in his country that there is in the world. He appoints all the committees, he appoints all the judges, he appoints, I mean, all the ministers. I mean, he's just got so much power. You think about those judges, that's a really big deal. And it goes right, the whole federal court is appointed by him and his office. So that, like you say, that PMO is just all powerful in this country. And you're absolutely right. It should not be. They said to Thomas Jefferson once, they said we should have longer terms for congressmen so they can get more done. He said there's nothing to do. He said there's very little to do. He says you got a constitution that you have to work with. And he said if you want to exact small changes here and there, maybe you should do that. But sweeping changes, you don't need to. We've done the work on that. But here in Canada, we have a parliament that comes in and will wipe out everything. I mean, look at Stephen Harper. We actually probably were I would say, much better off under Stephen Harper. But pretty much his entire legacy has been wiped out by, the hoodlums that are running things now.
Which is terrible, because then somebody comes in and governs well for a period of time, and that can all be undone.
Yeah.
And I'm not even saying that Harper was the best at
No.
governance. I mean, Fiscally, I was more of a fan of his economic policy. Obviously, it benefited a lot of Canadians. Largely, we weren't affected as much by the '08 crash as other countries surrounding the United States, big trading partners with the United States. I know Japan. My wife's from Japan, so I know Japan got hit really hard with that. Other countries obviously did, but we did well. We did well considering, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the fiscal policy. But I mean, there's other things that I wasn't a big fan of, like the concept of the Trans-Pacific Partnership that they were all happy to get on board with. There's a bunch of other things that I mean, we all disagree on. Every
Sure.
politician. It's not.
No, but we have to remember too is that he did a lot of that with a minority government, and then had a majority for a very, a very brief period of time, actually, but found a way to work and still get things done and save us with the the counter of the NDP and Liberals, sort of pushing back against everything he was trying to do. But I know the TPP, I don't, I feel like every time I think I understand it, I'm confounded by why we're doing these things. I don't quite understand, to be honest. I'm sure there's probably a good reason, but I'm not getting it. I don't see how. The other part too that was very difficult for Harper was he was working with a very a hostile American government. I mean, Obama was no friend of Harper's at any time there, and I think a lot of
That's
things were
true.
done trying to find some rapprochement. We could find a way to make things work. That's there was a lot of stuff that had to be, and I think the pipelines. Much of the stuff we did with the pipelines was all just trying to see if there's a way we could get those through. So we agreed to things climate wise. I don't think he necessarily thought he thought he would work around those later once we got the pipelines through and got things going. But there it is.
Yeah, tell me about that because I mean, obviously you're an MLA candidate. You're going to be going for the legislature in British Columbia.
Yes.
But obviously you understand a lot about government. Now, when you're in government, yeah, you have to make concessions on certain things. We're not a country where the governing party has ultimate rule over everybody, and 50% of the population or whatever population that didn't agree with that has to just sit this one out for the next X amount of years. We still have a robust debate. We still have people that oppose certain ideas, and then there's compromises that need to be made. So yeah, tell us more about that. Like, I know here in British Columbia, there is a lot of things that went down under the NDP over the past however long they've been in, and have they made any compromises? Because they seem to have been very straight pushing their agenda.
Yeah, I don't feel there's many compromises they made. If any, I mean, they didn't give much to business. They didn't give much to free enterprise. I think they've taken so much away. I mean, we're going to be walking into, should we have the opportunity to govern, we've got the environmentalists that are going to be up against us, and they'll fight hard. I mean, we haven't seen much of them really in this province. Once someone else gets into power, things will probably really change. And of course, you got First Nations now that are much more, they're on the ascendance. I think UNDRIP has made quite a change in how we deal with land, and we'll have to find a way to work with them. And then what's nationally and what's going to happen for the next year with Trudeau and the federal government. I mean, they'll probably do a lot to try and frustrate us, because I think that's what they want to do. I don't think they have any. I don't think they really want things to succeed. I know it sounds crazy. You would think you'd want prosperity, but by their past performance over the last 9 years, it doesn't look like it.
No, I mean they have a very contentious role or relationship with Alberta at the moment with Danielle Smith, and there are people in Alberta, conservatives, that are arguing that she's not doing enough. She's not trying. She's not pushing hard enough. That this is once you're in, you have about 100 days to get your agenda moving. Like, this is where you're going. Push it, push, and if you don't, people just kind of fizzle out and feel that it's not going to happen. But she's been having this uphill fight, obviously, with Trudeau every step of the way, with Guilbeault every step of the way. Is this something that you guys are anticipating as the Conservative Party? That you look like you're going to win this. Like, it looks like you guys are going to be, if not a majority, at least a minority government moving into the election coming up in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, I really, it's funny. We talk about our leader, and people have. Someone said to me the other day, "Well, is he really a conservative?" And I said, "Well, it was a coalition party, And so this is a man who was a conservative from up north and has a chance now to be that conservative that I think he wanted to be in that BC Liberal Party. I feel that. I've talked to him, and I find him to be quite refreshing. He's got a very sort of a calm approach to that. But he said, he said to me one day, "You be ready to work." He said a lot of MLAs, he said, for the longest time, found it to be a pretty casual job in a sense, where you had time to spend in your riding. As MLAs still worked, but a small little group would kind of make decisions, and then you just vote on things. He says, "I want all hands on deck." He said, "We're going to have to make some changes. We're going to have to fight to get this legislation through." That didn't bother me at all. I was happy to hear that. I think it's why I want to get involved in this. But yes, I think we're really prepared for what's going to hit us. I mean, the media is not going to be on our side. We're going to have, I'm sure we'll have, like I say, the third parties and the environmentalists, and then there'll be an opposition. Should we be so lucky to form government? So yeah, I think we're prepared for that. How much you can prepare for it until you actually get in there and see, what everything looks like once you get behind the, get behind the curtain and look around and see what they've done. I can't imagine the mess that it is. I really can't.
Is there a platform now that people can read? They can go read on the Conservative website on particular issues?
Yeah, Conservative Party of BC is got. I'm trying to think. I don't have the exact website address, but you can look it up. There's a policy page. I frankly, before I was going to run, I read that and thought, wow, I can really get behind this. Like this was great. I was so happy. I've been a member of the party for a long time, and it just, I saw that and I thought, wow, I was really enthusiastic to see something so straightforward that people could embrace. I could embrace. I thought it was just really well done, and I know that the people that in the party that are up above that, I don't want to overstate it, but it's a lot of hard work. We've got an executive director who's just constantly going, and now right now with things going the way they are, I mean, it seems like all that work is paying off, which is great, because so many times it doesn't pay off. And I think for so long the Conservatives were really thrashing around, and now I think they've got focus and they've got something, sort of a vision. And I would look at the Conservative Party of BC, the Our Ideas page, and I do like that a lot. There's straightforward.
I saw this article just before going live tonight, and I just wanted to pop it up. And this is from True North, talking about BC Conservatives deny NDP claim that they'll cut healthcare funding. So this is a claim that was put out by the NDP saying that, well, I'll just read some of it. BC Conservatives are denying the claim that from an NDP MLA alleging that the party wants to cut healthcare by millions of dollars. On Thursday, the BC Conservatives announced that their party's healthcare platform promising large reforms to the province's single-payer healthcare model, which I think needs serious reforms. I mean, you don't even have to know much about politics to know that. But after the BC Conservatives' healthcare announcement, Langford Juan de Fuca MLA Ravi Parmar uploaded a video to X with the caption claiming that the BC Conservatives want to make the biggest cut to the province's healthcare budget in history, and that they would result in doctors and nurses being fired. And I thought that was rich, because we're the only province where doctors and nurses are still fired over the NDP's legislation to keep them out of their jobs because of not getting the jab. And here they are saying that you guys are going to fire people. I'm like, how do we square this circle? Because there's always like a bunch of BS, and then there's the truth. So where's the BS and where's the truth?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked in detail at our healthcare policy, but I mean, I know the general idea of it, but there is the idea of cutting and taking out things out is sort of the typical cry from the left whenever the right comes along. I think money is going to be spent more wisely and trying to reinvigorate opportunities for other healthcare options, but absolutely bringing back doctors and bringing back nurses that are still out of work. We've got highly skilled people that need to come back to work. So I would have to, I'll check back with you on that number, that $4.1 billion. I've not heard that. I mean, it's so that, yeah, that's completely new to me. I didn't realize that was even out there.
Oh yeah, that you were reading that. Yeah, Parmar pointed out that 12 of the BC Conservatives patients first healthcare plan, is in quotes here, claiming that BC Conservatives are planning a $4.1 billion cut to the province's healthcare, and that they want to privatize the healthcare system. So this is one thing that this is me just kind of on a personal rant. The concept of privatize, the word itself, it's a loaded
Yeah,
word. It's a word
sure.
that comes with a connotation that says the government ought to run this enterprise, that the government is the only one that should ever run this enterprise. But that's ridiculous. I mean, you look at all kinds of different enterprises that the government has taken over and socialized, and they run it poorly. They run it way worse than the private sector could possibly ever run it. And then to suggest that possibly that Canadians might have a private option, we're the only country in the OECD that doesn't give a private option to healthcare and relieve some of the burden from healthcare, for example. But yet, we're in such dire straits here in British Columbia that we're sending people to the United States for cancer screenings and cancer surgeries and all these other things when we have, for example, the Canby Surgical Clinic with Dr. Day, who's perfectly willing to do it, but the Supreme Court of British Columbia has shot him down for over 12 years.
Yeah, it's so confounding. I don't even know. I don't have an answer. I find it to be astonishing that we're so ideologically driven. We'd rather see people go without surgery than finding a way to, you have like a pressure valve where you could have people who have the means to go forward and get the care that they need, and maybe free up the space for somebody else in the public system. But in Singapore, it's kind of interesting. They have a system where people, doctors who work in the private system, have to work 1 day a week in the public system. So they take that skill and bring it in, and they spread that knowledge and teach the other doctors how to do things at that level, and it works out fine. They do a lot of work for people. People get that quality kind of quality health care that they need. I mean, it doesn't have to be between America and really there's only Cuba and North Korea are the only other two countries not allowed to have private health care. So it's good company we're keeping. But there's other models. There's other models around the world. I mean, France or England or Sweden. I mean, gosh, we follow them in everything else when it comes to climate. But I mean, why can't we look at their healthcare system and see if there's a better way to do this? I'm a little stunned by that. Of course, as soon as you talk about it, people get hysterical pretty quick.
Yeah, why is that? We have this weird culture in Canada where, as far as I know, there's two things that make us Canadian for my entire life. I'm a dual citizen, by the way, so I've always lived in border towns, and I've always associated myself with half American, half Canadian, and it's always been this thing where be proud of being Canadian because one, we're not American, and that's somehow a virtue, and then the other one is always been healthcare. And we have free healthcare. You wouldn't want to be like those Americans. But I mean, there's other countries that have free healthcare, but they allow private as well, and all of that stuff. But it just seems ridiculous that this is the culture that we have. So it becomes a thing that we have this in our heads that our healthcare system's good when it's terrible, but people still believe that it's good. How is that?
I don't know. I mean, I've got a few years on you, and it's never been any different. And the idea that they think that Americans sit around and they look away from the Yankees game and say, "Gosh, if we could only be in Canada, we get free healthcare." Like they really think that people trying to be like us. It's laughable, really. I don't think they give it another thought, a second thought. I really don't. And one thing about the United States, if you have insurance and you're in the United States, if you're able to have insurance, and I know it sounds but it's phenomenal. I mean, you're tested and your diagnostics are the best anywhere. And I mean, if you've got something wrong, they're going to find out what it is because they have to. I mean, they're quite litigious down there, and if they screw something up, you can come back at them. So I mean, it's kind of they're held to a very high standard by the courts themselves. Now I'm not sure they always win, but I mean, they do think about it. As is the public system. I get the feeling the public system is pretty much like ours, because they do have a public channel in there where people can go.
Yeah, that's right. No, you're absolutely right about that. I know a lot of people in the United States, and they all They'll say, well, it's pretty good, and they get misconceptions of what healthcare is in Canada as well, because they'll say,
Yeah.
well, oh, well, yeah, well, when you go to the dentist, you're like, ah, but that's private. Okay, well, when you get your eyes checked, oh, well, that's private. Oh,
Right.
when you get
Right.
physiotherapy, oh, that's private. Oh, when you got a
Podiatrist.
massage, that's private. Like,
Yeah.
what covers? What are you covered
Yeah.
for?
Yeah. Podiatrist. You get your feet. Podiatrists are the same thing. You pay for them. You pay for it. Right. You
Yeah.
don't. It's not the same. I
Incidentally,
know.
I'm a mechanic, and I constantly get stuff caught in my eyes. Even though I wear
Right.
glasses, but stuff gets in my eyes. I always go to my optometrist because I'll be in and out in an hour,
Yep.
and I'll pay a nominal. It's a small fee, but I'll be in and out in an hour. If I go to the emergency room, which is the only option in the public medical system, I'm there all
Right.
day. I'm there the
Yeah.
entire day, so it's not even worth my time.
How many people? How many? I mean, especially this is one thing about men. How many men go? I'm just not going. I think a big part of it is I'm going to sit there all day, and at the end, someone's going to say, you're okay. Go ahead. You're fine. And men don't get the kind of attention they probably need because of that. And if they had the opportunity to go somewhere else, they probably would. And you're smart for doing that. Pay a bit of money and get it done, and you're out and back to work. Makes sense.
Yeah,
It'd be
yeah,
nice to have that
and
opportunity.
yeah, it can be a bit of a cultural thing. Like, suck it
Yeah.
up, Buttercup. Get back to work.
Yeah. I wonder if I can. I wonder if I'm going to try and tell us, if I could, if you indulge me for a second, about
Sure.
the approach to job. I'm going to try and tell this story. And I don't want to talk about who it is, but I want to talk something I was exposed to. It was years back, not too long ago. But I just someone that I got to know, and he was struggling with addiction, and they took
Okay.
me into. They called me up one day from BC Health Services or Family Services. They said, "Come to a meeting," and everyone was there. And they asked me, they said, well, his son, they said, would you look after his child when he wants to use? He said, could we get you to do that? And I said, no, I won't do that. And they said, well, why? Because we're trying to do harm reduction here. And I said, well, I'm not going to make it easy for him to do drugs. And there were 3 people there. I'm just being blunt. The 3 people out there with Family Services were looking at me like I was a mean. They said, well, we're talking about harm reduction. And I said, no, I think it's kind of like harm amplification. I said, I don't want to make it easier for him to do this. I said, this is something you just said earlier. We got to get people to stop this. So I really wonder how many more stories there are out there where people are put on a spot like that to try and, further this. It's quite shocking as to what's going on here in our province.
Well, that's an interesting one, because I had Aaron Gunn on the show before, and he did the documentary. He's running for office federally now, but before he did that, he did the documentary "Canada is Dying," which was all about the drug addiction issue in Canada. And so I had him on the show. I had him on the show to talk about that, and then I had him on again because his show got age gated on YouTube, and that's a hard restriction. So when your video gets age gated, you have to be signed in, and you have to click like, I agree, I'll still watch this.
Yeah.
But what it does to the video is it virtually makes it unshareable. It makes it so the algorithm won't pick it up because it's not going to recommend it out to people because it's under age restricted. So it squashed his video. And the reason why it got squashed was because he didn't know at first, and I did some digging, because my video talking to him about it and not showing any of the stuff that was in his movie got age gated as well. And I was really curious, and so I did some digging, and I actually found someone on Twitter who claimed that they were the person who flagged it on YouTube. And so I continued to have a discussion with this person, and they said that, well, I feel that it was hateful content because anything other than, helping these people out in the way that they prescribe is hateful, and that you're hateful towards addicts if you don't want to indulge them in their addiction and you want to actually get them off the drugs as quick as possible. So they felt that it was hateful.
Yeah, I mean, I tell that story, and I don't, but I couldn't have cared more about the entire family. And from my position, I mean, to say now he's clean and he's done great and he's doing fine. But at that point there, I thought, what are you asking of people to do here? Because I can't be the first person that was asked to do something like that. And you really, really scratch your head. I had a good friend who said that he was actually a doctor on the downtown east side, and he said if you're not pushing people towards recovery, then you're making a mistake by giving them access to drugs, easy access to drugs. You have to be
I
going towards
agree.
recovery. I mean, I hope we can change that and move towards that, because my gosh, the broken souls. I mean, I used to have a friend who owned a gym right down at Hastings in Maine in the early 80s. I would go down there, and I'm not saying it was a nice place, but it was okay. I mean, it wasn't too bad. And work out, and I'd go home on the bus and take the bus back to Coquitlam. And I wouldn't walk around with 20s hanging out of my pockets, but I mean, I could get on the bus and just keep my head, keep alert as to who's there. But a lot of the boxers and the guys lifting weights would all jump on the bus and go. It was not a big deal. Today, I mean, I wouldn't go there at 11 a.m. I mean, that same area, it's tragic. It's absolutely tragic. I'm not mad at those people. I just feel so bad at all those broken souls and broken lives. I don't know how we can think for 1 second we're helping them. Do you remember Through a Blue Lens? I think that's what it was called. Do you remember that the police documentary they did? The Vancouver police shot their own videos, and they showed them. It was the downtown east side. And if you look at them again today, it looks like a travel log. Like, it looks like, oh, look at that, downtown looks great. Like, it was supposed to be how horrible it was. But compared to today, it's quaint. I mean, and again, more broken souls, and I felt bad, but nothing like this is today. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it's hard to drive down there. It's hard to look at that. But yeah, if you get a chance, it takes you back to the 90s, and it's called Through a Blue Lens. I'm pretty sure that's the name of it. And the Vancouver PD were kind of groundbreaking. Yeah.
And it's like one tiny area of the street where there's
Well, yeah, and they kind of go into Gastown a bit in some of the back alleys, and they find people. And I mean, yeah, I mean, look, Friday night and what they call Welfare Wednesday was always a little bit rough, but I mean, compared to what this is today, I say it's all cheap and lying. It is.
It really is mind blowing, and I would encourage anybody in the area to go see it from the safety of your vehicle, drive through and see it, because like, don't take people's word for it. Go there and like, you're safe if you're in your car. Lock your doors, drive through it. But it like, you can't go from one end of town to the other end of town without having seen it anyway. I mean, it's right on the main drag. Hastings, if you're, I don't know, let's say you're I went to BCIT, and if I wanted to go to downtown from there, I got to go right through the downtown east side. It's right there. You're driving right down Hastings to get there, and it's disgusting. It's really, really sad what's happened. And it's funny, because I was talking about this with Marty up north. I do a show with him every week.
Sure.
And this week it came up, and he brought up the fact that, like, well, okay, they're doing this. Why don't they open up a bar for alcoholics and have free shots?
Well,
like, I mean, it's the same thing. It doesn't. It sounds ludicrous. Of course, you're not going to do that.
Well, I said it's like,
it wouldn't help
why don't
people.
why don't you get a pickup and a trailer and take a hoarder out to garage sales on Saturdays and load it up for them?
Yeah, it's weird.
Grab what you want.
Yeah.
It's don't you need a record holder? Don't you need another record? How many newspapers do you want? We can get them for you. We can load them up. I mean, it's insane. But they were talking about the ingredients in like some pop that they want to get rid of, and they're taxing sugary drinks and that. If I come around the corner and I see my kid drinking an Orange Crush and eating cheesies, I think I can handle that probably better than doing fentanyl or trank. I'd probably have I think I could work them through that and get them off the orange stuff if I had to. It's
the orange stuff.
It's goofy. I mean, we become. I don't know. Like I said, they can't be trying to fix it. They can't be. It just.
So this is actually, because you bring up the sugar drinks, and this is a perfect example of why governments always have a short-term solution that turns out to be very long-term and causes these ripples through the economy and causes issues. So why is it that we, the Mayor Bloomberg, this is why it became famous, wanted
Michael
to
Bloomberg.
make a sugar drink tax in New York, and that was this is why it hit the radar, everybody's radar. And other municipalities, other places, they even in Canada were musing this idea. So this is why sugar drinks are so cheap. It's crazy. So back in the turn of the century, like early 1900s or even the late 1800s, there was sugarcane farmers in like Louisiana and Florida that wanted to compete in the market for sugarcane, but the South American market, trade, new trade routes were coming up, and technology to bring supplies across from country to country was happening, and sugarcane grows like weed in
Yeah.
like a weed in South
Yeah.
America. It's not, you don't have to try. It just happens, right? It's like,
Right.
oh,
Right.
I just found another couple of acres of sugarcane. Let's go harvest that. So they couldn't compete with these South American sugarcane farmers, and it was just flooding in the border, cheap, cheap, cheap. And they lobbied the government and said, we need a tariff on the border on sugarcane. And so enough lobbying goes through, and the government obliges them and says, okay, you're going to pay this tax. Well, who benefits? The farmers, not the consumer, obviously. The consumer doesn't
Right.
benefit at all. Well, guess what? Those farmers failed anyway. And then they got into whatever other products or whatever thing that they could do with their acreages. And the taxes remained. The tariffs never went
Oh,
away.
right.
So the tariffs, they stuck around for ages, and people were looking for alternatives for sugar because it just cost too much for this sugar that came from South America through the tariffs. And then the corn farmers come in and they say, "Hey, we've discovered this new thing, high fructose corn syrup. It's great. It's a great replacement for it." Well, that became the thing, so they started using this in food products. And then it got
Right.
even
Right.
cheaper when the government
Right.
came in and said, "Hey, we're going to use tax dollars and subsidize corn so we get a whole much more of it." And so the government's actions made high fructose corn syrup, which is really unhealthy for you, readily available and cheap, and then all the soda manufacturers started using that.
Right. Right. Right.
And
And then you
then
have the, yeah. Then the Farm Bill comes up in what, 2006? Was that when they did the Farm Bill? I think it was around that time. And
I'm
corn
not
and
sure.
corn. Yeah. Now corn is going to be a fuel, right? So they ethanol. So they did it again. I mean, they
Oh, they
repurposed
add
corn
more.
again.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, they
Exactly.
add
Yeah.
more.
Pile on more
And
to it.
then it's crazy. So at the end of the day, you live in New York City. You want to get a soda, and it appears super cheap, but the problem is it's only cheap nominally. You're actually paying for it in your taxes federally, and and it's only available this way because of tariffs that date back over 100 years. And now the mayor says, for your safety and your health, we're going to put an extra tax on it to bring it back
Oh.
up. And this is the reason why in Mexico they use sugar in Coca-Cola, because they don't have those tariffs there.
Well, it's interesting you say that, and you're talking about like all these politicians. I mean, so many of these city councilors and people that get in, I don't think they have enough to do. So they come along, and the UN comes along and tells them that they have some initiatives that they could champion, and so they jump on things like that. I mean, they're looking to make themselves busy, but the truth is, they really could just sit around and worry about crosswalks and making sure that the streets are cleared in the winter. I mean, that would be enough for them to do, but they look for more and more things to get themselves involved with. And I don't know. I mean, like,
and then
I
and then they neglect the tasks that they're actually there for, like
exactly,
you said, clearing
exactly.
clearing sidewalks and roads. That stuff
Well,
doesn't get done, and then we have all this other added stuff that they put on their plate.
and the regulations that they've imposed on builders, and the cost of the fees. I mean, the cost per square foot is skyrocketing. But now they're saying, now there's a move from the provincial government. They put an order in council through Bill 44, 45, and 47. That's densification of residential property. That they're telling people, and it's not an option. In some cases, they're saying if you're near a bus stop, you're going to have to densify. You're going to have to add on to your property. You have to have more dwellings, more living space. They're also talking about people giving up, space in their homes to homeless people. If you have a big home and it's only, a couple people in the house, with just, I don't know where that's going to go. But they're actually, this densification is something that they're really pushing through. And the law actually stated, it was an order in council, so it's not legislation, but they said that there is no duty to consult, that the government has no duty to consult with the public. They're just telling the municipalities what they have to do. So they're actually forcing them to densify. They're starting to do it now. They're imposing this on corner lots. If you're near a bus stop, they're going to try and. I don't know. They're not. We haven't improved the services. We don't have our infrastructure's not improved. It's outrageous. It's going to be one of the biggest issues we face. If we don't.
Well,
get rid of
it was what's the new minister of housing? He was the old minister. It's not Mark Miller. It's the other guy.
Housing. Who's housing now? Not Champagne.
The guy who used to be
Fraser,
the immigration minister.
Sean Fraser.
Yeah, Sean Fraser. So he got on Twitter, and I showcased this on one of my live streams. He had a tweet where he said, oh, okay, we're going to grant people up to $40,000 to make another dwelling on their property. Where, you know, you...
Yeah. That's...
I told you that was going to happen. I told you that was going to happen. All right.
I'm going to stop. So I'm going to go.
Anyway. so he put out this tweet saying we're going to encourage people with this, you know, we're going to give you a subsidy up to $40,000 to build another dwelling on your property. And I brought this up because it's so absurd that he's neglected the fact that on every level, governmental level, you're not going to get even close to making that with $40,000. Not to mention, he wanted it as this speedy thing. And the reason why I say you're not going to get to do it is because the regulation. You're going to have to ask for permission to do it. And then you're going to have to get permits for all the different aspects of the build. Even just the concrete slab alone is going to cost you tons of money. And then you try to build a foundation, a building on it, a dwelling, a separate rental unit with a separate hydrometer, a separate this. It is astronomical the amount of money that it costs these days. And he's trying to use this as an incentive to do this quickly to house people. And it's like, dude, you got to realize, Mr. Government guy that's got this fancy idea, it's because of governments, it would take 2 years to even get the permission to make that happen. It's not a speedy thing.
Well, you wouldn't be running out of potato chips if you didn't let so many people into the party. I mean, this is the problem here. I mean, it's you can close the border at any time and we can stop this. This is a manufactured crisis. So, and it's the old cause the problem and offer the solution, or, you know, it's the Hegelian dialectic. I don't know, whatever you want to say. It's like in slow motion, though. They've just steamrolled us. And I don't understand how I don't know. I don't know what you do, but I'll say this. Should we not be able to form government, and hopefully that we will, but I would say this. I would tell the government, first, you get all the infrastructure in place. You bring the sewers and the infrastructure all up to grade, up to standard. And then if we want to build homes and build extra homes after the 12 years it takes you to do that, then we'll ponder that at that point. But this is crazy. I also think, though, I think we should, I know this sounds bizarre, and maybe, I'm not sure, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I think we should have elections for the UN. We have UN elections, worldwide UN elections. And if these people are going to run our lives, then we need to vote for them.
Well, I don't think we should delegitimize them. I don't think they should.
But that's okay. Just the practice of them having to come out and debate each other and take 8 months off when they couldn't be making all these decrees and that. If we can't get rid of them, let's just say you got to be elected. I don't even care. I just think we have to do something to stop this, because
I like that. I like that idea. Tie them up with elections. We should make their elections annual.
Every 4 months. Yeah, no, and seriously though, I'd say every 3 years we have to have a worldwide global election. I don't care, and we're gonna have debates, and we'll have. And here's the thing: you'd have the argument, because right now, what's the one thing that's missing at the UN? The one thing that's missing:
representation.
There's no opposition. You have no right to oppose anything. None. That's right. So you look at Parliament, you look at legislature, you look at City Council. You have people to oppose. You have someone to oppose. There's no opposition. They're opposed. You know, you can go in there maybe if they want you to or let you to, but you and I can't go in there and say we don't like this. I mean, as I say, I go back to my Magna Carta. I mean, we have to have another relationship with power. We're allowing this to go way too far. You know, I mean, BlackRock is a problem, but I think our acquiescence to it might be more of a problem. I just don't know how you inspire people. And let's face it, I mean, the media and the academia and the courts are all on the other side. They're not going to go with us, but okay, well, maybe we need to fight.
Well, people are inspired, but I fear that people get inspired and without the knowledge, they can be pushed in the wrong directions, right? And that's when people just become mobs, especially when there's things to be genuinely angry about. And this is what I try to focus on with my channel. And like as you came in, I'm talking about first principles and stuff like this.
Yeah.
This is
Oh
why I
yeah.
get into the weeds. I get into the deep, heavy conversation pieces because this is what people need to understand, and we need to understand what we're up against, and how quickly people can be swayed and manipulated, especially
Oh
by
yeah.
people who are very good at it. I mean, they're there for reasons. The true guys like Trudeau are in office because he is very good at manipulating people.
Yeah, I think he is, but I think if he didn't have the backup of a compliant media and a compliant, I mean, there's nobody in, he doesn't have any pushback from third parties like we do. I mean, the whole thing. I'll say something. In 2015, there was a thing called Imagine October 20th, and I did a deep dive because I didn't like the way 2015 turned out. It was pretty bad, and the third parties, Lead Now, Council for Canadians, Dogwood Initiative, Sierra Club, they all went to work. I mean, they caused some real problems. But there was a thing called Imagine October 20th from a thing called, pardon my French, Shit Harper Did, SHD. And they were the guys who were responsible for the Stop Harper, all those little Harper signs on the stop signs,
Yeah.
which no mayors would take off. Robertson wouldn't allow his people to take them off. They left them all there until after the election. But they came up with a thing called Imagine October 20th, and it was a series of rock concerts across the country. 7 in Toronto, 6 in Montreal, 6 in Winnipeg, Vancouver, Victoria, Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer. Blah, blah. Anyway, they had all these concerts, and they were all anti-Harper. They weren't pro-NDP or pro-Liberal. They were a little bit like pro both, but they were most definitely anti-Harper. But here's the thing. Elections Canada was at every single event registering people. And in fact, they sponsored the evening in Ottawa. It was called Ballads
Elections
and Ballads.
Canada did?
Yeah, they sponsored it. I have the receipts. I kept them.
That sounds like outside of their purview because it sounds so partisan.
I would love to ask the question of who you investigate everyone, but who investigates you? Who investigates you, Elections Canada?
Right.
Because I mean, this was absolutely outrageous what they did, and I couldn't get anyone to bite. There's some senators that I tried to talk to; they weren't interested in taking it forward. But I can find a file somewhere on my computer. It's got everything in one folder, and it's just shocking. It's just shocking. And you saw, like, at every event, it was anti-Harper, pro-NDP, pro-Liberal, right on stage. You're not allowed. You're allowed to promote an issue, but you're not allowed to promote a political party, or you're not allowed to, denounce a political party at these third-party events.
But effectively, that's what they were doing. Yeah.
It's exactly what they were doing. Not effectively, they actually were doing it. They actually were going against Harper and had anti-Harper signs. It was just the whole thing was crazy. But how does one party fight against that kind of power? I mean, and then, like I said, then you got the media. What was the last election when Trudeau handed out, was it something like $68 million to all the local community newspapers across the country just before the federal election? Newspapers out here got $250,000, $450,000. They don't get that kind of money. If you're the local rag, I mean, you're not getting that kind of dough from anybody. So
no,
I mean,
and no wonder they're very upset about the idea of defunding. As the federal conservatives are talking about defunding not only CBC but defunding all of the subsidies that they give to all of these rags, all of these different publishers. I mean, how well would the Globe and Mail do today? How well would CTV do on their own today if they didn't have the subsidies?
Yeah, apparently there's even another level of that where they give away contracts to these people. For, like, the Winnipeg Free Press got $5 million a year for providing news clippings to Ottawa, like to the government. I don't even know what it means. It's a handout of $5 million. I mean, I don't know what to say.
News clippings? I mean, just go on Twitter. You'll find all the clippings are right there.
It's just an excuse to give money away. That's what I think. But I wouldn't get rid of the CBC. I mean, I'm running provincially, so that won't be and if I was to ever get there, it won't be in my bailiwick. But if I was there, I I would make like I would give you a show on the CBC. I would put Ezra Levant in charge of the CBC. I would keep it there. You do that for about 2 years, and I'm telling you, the Liberals will be dying to get rid of it. They'll get rid of the CBC themselves. But I'm not even joking. Why not use
Oh,
it
that's
as a
funny.
weapon? Use our weapon, Northern Perspective. It'd be on at 8 o'clock every night. Why not?
Oh, that's too funny because it would kill us. Most of us YouTubers would be like, forget it. I don't want to lose my ratings.
No, no, you wouldn't because everybody would watch. Do you remember? Do you remember Sun News? Did you watch it at all?
Nah,
When
never.
Sun News was on the air, it was actually
No.
Brian Lilly was there and Ezra Levant and trying to.
Yeah,
I think
I'm
Dave
aware of
Foley
it,
was
but I never watched it.
it was well, it was way up on the dial. You got a nosebleed going up to those channels. It was so high, just kind of dizzy up here. But
Yeah.
it was actually they wanted to bring it down to the regular cable, and so they would get that regular cable money for being on air. So they were trying to do that, and they wouldn't let them. They stopped them. But I'm telling you, if it did happen, people would watch that. People, it's not that people don't like people don't not they have nothing against the news on TV. They don't like that particular news because it's one-sided and it's not informative. So they don't want to hear it.
That still kind of fits with my argument because my argument is that CBC should be able to function on its own without government subsidies. And if the CBC made a good product, like you're saying, they would be able to function on their own because they would have a viewership.
But I mean, just for a while, let's see what it looks like in a country where conservatism is the one that you pay for. I'm sorry, but I'm just saying, why not play their game? Play their game for a while. What would that look like? What would it look like in this country if
That's a funny game. That's a funny game. Yeah, because it's definitely the other way right now. You look at the CBC hiring website, and they actively say no Caucasian males. What is that? What is that? I mean, it's discrimination at its maximum. And I'm not one way or the other. Just to hire anybody who's capable of doing the job.
Yeah, I know it. It's kind of funny because you look at people on the air on CBC and you kind of want to go, yeah, I guess you're pretty hot. I mean, they got pretty good equipment, probably good makeup people and that, but you're kind of a fraud because they can't hire anybody else. I mean, it's like going back and thinking about guys who weren't allowed to play in Major League Baseball because of the color barrier, and you go, well, how good are these other guys? Are they good? I don't know. I mean, I guess they're okay, but we don't really know. If there's better people that aren't allowed to play, how do we really know who those people are? I mean, that's probably not the best example, but it's kind of like there. You look at some of these people and think, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, there's an awful lot of well-deserving people who could be on there happen to be Caucasian. I mean, look at the food line of the food lines and the streets are seem to be littered lately with a lot of Caucasian men. It's a sad state of affairs right now. I don't know what's happened here. I think I know. But.
Well, and the interesting thing was that COVID really showed that their main thing was that they wanted an ideological line. And the amount of people that were fired from the CBC, CTV, Global, all these other places over their stance on mandates, that was really telling. And it really it radicalized them too. It radicalized them to a further degree because now the dissent within the company is gone. And now they're ideologically pure. And you just gotta go along with that. What do you do with a scenario like that?
Well, you don't. And
how do you diversify again?
Well, one thing for sure is you don't watch it because there's nothing to watch anymore. It's not there. I mean, and I should be clear. The idea that there's anybody. I mean, that I have a good friend of mine who's doing a lot of work getting food, surplus food and food that's that's going out of date and getting it to some of the food hampers and that. And I'll be there's a lot of people lining up to go there, and they're of all persuasions. And it's heartbreaking. There's a lot of seniors that are going to community food hampers to get a loaf of bread and see if they can get some beans or something. I don't even know what to say. I mean, it's like
that's the saddest part because seniors they're subject to fixed incomes, right? So when you're stuck on a fixed income and your government is inflating the currency. Now, I keep talking about this on the channel. Inflation is the printing of the money supply. What they're measuring with the CPI and all this stuff is the effects of inflation. The
Right.
inflation is actually increasing the monetary supply. The government is doing that in cahoots with the
Right.
Bank of Canada. Now, when the government's doing that, they're really screwing over fixed income people first. Like you're on a fixed income, you're not getting an adjustment on your fixed
No.
income to match inflation. And when they flub the numbers to make it look like it's only 2.7% inflation, even if they were to adjust for inflation, you're not going to get the benefit of what the real inflation adjustment would be, which would be much larger number nominally anyway. So
Yeah.
those people are getting screwed over the worst. And to see that, seniors are going and waiting in food lines or lines to go to the food bank, that's just devastating.
It is absolutely devastating. I mean, you can't. I mean, I will say this though, is with inflation, but you can't take a carbon. You can't carbon tax. You can't tax energy the way they are. You tax energy and then you increase it. And you increase it again. I mean, that just it drives the cost of everything up. It drives the cost of, like a friend of mine said, you can walk to the store. It's still going to cost you more when you get there. I mean, to turn the lights on, to turn the heat on, to turn the air conditioning on, it costs more all the time. That has to go somewhere. Forget just the transportation of the goods to there, or getting the goods from the farm to the, to the processing, and then from the warehouse and moving it to the stores. I mean, that's all gone up. Everything's gone up. I mean, it's I don't know, like you take that out of the mix, and I wonder how fast prices come down and where they land. I think we'd be quite startled to see how much is being added on by that. It's a crazy tax.
Well, the budget officer himself under in one of those committees said it would be a 60% reduction. I think right away. He
Yeah.
said it would be massive. It would be massive, and it would be immediate.
Yeah, and that's where I wonder. I know I hear the talk about inflation. I think there's also something to that, but you wonder if that would be a first step. I mean, why would you pile on now? Why are you doing this for a global gas that we produce such a small amount in the world, and China and India produce massive amounts. And how many trees do we have that are that carbon sink? I mean, is it really a problem? Can they measure that problem? I mean, this is what I have to ask, and I'm not sure. I'm not thinking. I said it's like almost like telling your kid to get out. Don't pee in the pool. Meanwhile, someone's running a full, a pipe of effluent going right into the pool. You've done nothing by getting out and using the bathroom. It didn't make a difference. You're still swimming in it. And if carbon really is the problem, if it's the problem they say it is, well, taxing us is not going to stop this global gas, or this global emission from affecting us, if that is what is affecting us.
So it makes me wonder if they're actually being serious about it. If you look at it and you look at it from a real world solutions perspective. So let's for the sake of argument say that they're right about their assumptions that global
Sure.
warming gases, that CO2
CO2.
is causing this catastrophe that is a slow rolling catastrophe in our direction. Now, Canada is only 1.2% of global emissions. So that alone is like it's not enough to reduce our consumption. But what we could do in lieu of our normal consumption, don't say we our consumption is unchanged and we continue with fuel prices at normal market rates,
Yeah.
but we were to increase forestries, for example, forestry
Sure.
production, that would be a massive carbon sink to pull carbon dioxide that's not even being emitted by us, but other continents. The carbon dioxide, we're talking about a global scale here. So the
That's right.
carbon dioxide that's in the atmosphere, our trees would soak that up, and we would harvest those trees and turn it into tangible assets, homes, lumber, all of these things that are great. That a house that you put up is a carbon sink.
Right.
These are
Right.
things that are possible things that we could do, and we can have our cake and eat it too, and they can have their fantasy about the carbon dioxide, and we can say, hey, look, we're sequestering it, we're doing it a ton, and we're doing it in a responsible way by harvesting forests, and then on top of that, it would mitigate forest fires because we'd be taking care of the fuel load that's in our forests, all of these other issues that come along with that.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. What I always say is that people say you don't believe in climate change. I'm saying, but if you sign the Paris Climate Accord that allows India and China and the third world, the developing world, to continue creating CO2 until 2070, and then they get to decide what they want to do, I would contend that you don't believe in climate change. That if CO2 is the danger, what are you doing to address that danger? Because we really aren't the CO2 problem in the world, right?
No.
So I stopping us from CO2 and deindustrializing Canada. I don't, and meanwhile, these other countries, and good on them, are going full speed ahead with the greatest industrial. It's like a second industrial revolution. I mean, China just keeps on, producing more and more things.
Well, the joke there is like why does China not worried about global warming? Because they already have a communist government.
That's true. Yeah, I know. It seems so obvious. It just seems that it's obvious as to what's wrong here. But it's hard. I just argued with someone yesterday at the door and just telling me that I couldn't tell that all the changes, the climate change that I couldn't see. He said you have to see all the things that have happened, all the weather events. I've been around. I'm 64. I've seen enough weather events in my life. They were as bad when I was a kid as they are now. There's really no difference. He said, what about the thunderstorms? I live in Vancouver. I haven't really had a thunderstorm here in 7, 8 years that I have of significance. I mean, I've never seen the odd crack of lightning here and there, but I mean, we haven't had a real big electrical storm. I don't know what he's even talking about.
Right. I grew up in Ontario. I know what electrical storms look
like.
Oh
yeah, I'm from Winnipeg. It was prairie, those prairie storms. I was a kid one day. I remember running home. I was about 11, 12 years old. I was riding my bike home, and I was being chased, but looked like a black roll of carpet coming across the sky. I'd never seen a cloud like this in my life, and it came rolling across the sky. And when it landed, finally, it was one of the most devastating, lightning storms I've ever seen. I couldn't believe it. I've never seen anything, subsequently anything close to that. But
we used to witness that all the time in Ontario. Holy cow!
Oh, really?
The lake effect. Yeah, it does all these crazy.
Is that
things.
What that is? Is that what I was looking at?
Yeah, you get this. Whatever happens, this front will come in where it's clear blue skies, maybe the odd scattered cloud, and then suddenly there's this wall, and it's like dark.
Yeah,
it comes over, and then it'll drop. It'll drop about like 10, 15 degrees immediately. The wind picks up and there's the gnarly storm, and then half hour goes by, an hour goes by, and then it's sunny again. It's just the way it would go. It was like that was just the month of May every day at about 4:00.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I was in Florida, and I saw in Tampa where that's the same idea. 3:00 they have gigantic electrical storms that roll in, and and wreak havoc, and then they go away, and then it clears up again. You have a really nice night, and everybody hunkers down, and they're fine when it's done. But look at, I mean, we just had. I said it was in July. I think it was about 2 weeks ago that the Greenland ice mass gained 4 gigatons on a summer day, when it normally that day it would lose 4 gigatons. First time it's an 8 gigaton swing. I don't know. How do you explain that? What is, is that warming? I don't think so.
I just think that every once in a while you get freak storms. I mean, it just happens. I mean, throughout history, we would hear all of these stories of, you remember the storm of the summer of '73? Like, you hear about this stuff. And I don't see any weird frequency thing. In fact, I think it was like one of the ladies who it was a scientist, a lady who came up with this. First noted that there was like an increase. That's right. Yeah. And she was the first one to notice. She said at first that there was a frequency of storms coming in more and more and more because of global warming. And then she looked at the data further and realized she made a mistake. And when she was espousing the global warming theory, she was getting invited to all these places, and she'd get dinners, and she'd get all this stuff, and they loved her. But as soon as she came back to correct the record, they squashed her. And they didn't. Yeah, and it was like, wow, okay. And then that's where people see the conspiracy. This is where conspiracy theories come from. Like, well, obviously you don't like the news when it goes one way, and this whole theory surrounds around what you can do as a government to tax and usurp more power. So obviously you're gonna go for that.
Absolutely. And I think there is something really important about pollution. I think that we have to look at whether it's mercury or nitrogen or what, what's in the water and what's on the ground. I think we do ourselves a disservice paying so much attention to CO2 when the real thing is actually, hard. I like to look at our water and how is our water? How's our drinking water across this province? And are we at the level that we should be? And what are we putting into the ground? What else can we be? I have to say, I probably won't be popular. What's in those batteries, and what are we going to do with them when they're done in all those cars? Where are we going to put those? Because that stuff leaches into the soil. I can't imagine it's good. And we've yet to see, how do they, they burn pretty good. I don't want the. What happens when they get, when they finally have to be taken out? Where are they all going to go?
Yeah, I just had another one of those hiccups of the internet connection.
That's
But
all
yeah,
right.
where those
I
batteries.
thought it was kind of a dull subject, but not that bad.
No, 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 no. I get really
Oh, okay,
into this
okay,
one
just get on with
because
it.
no, because I like talking about this, especially. Okay, so I live in a particular region. I'm not very far from Britannia Beach, British
Right,
Columbia. It's
right.
on the Howe Sound
Yep.
waterway. It's an inlet. Now, for a huge amount of time, there's this giant copper mine, probably the biggest in the world at one
Yeah.
point, copper mine, and the amount of sediment and chemicals and all this stuff that ended up into the sound after I can't remember when they stopped milling. It was like in the 1970s,
Yeah.
and they've done massive reclamation projects to make sure that no more of it goes out into the Howe Sound because it decimated the aquatic life, decimated
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And now we're finally at the point where we're able to even eat the food that comes out of the water and this kind of thing. So yeah, it was a massive environmental thing, and these are the kind of environmental initiatives that I can get behind. Okay, well,
Absolutely.
yes, we want to have industry, but we want to make sure that we're not ruining our aquatic life. We don't want to ruin ecosystems, that kind of thing. But like this, sky is falling. Nobody really agrees on it. Stuff, and why are we letting other countries do what we are only doing in a tiny amount? Kind of argument. I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it. I really
No.
want to focus on real environmental issues, and
Yeah.
like I said, while encouraging industry, we just need to find ways of cleaning our act up.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone I did not get to go, but I would like to go one day and take the tour of the oil sands. Apparently, it's a wonder of the modern world as to what they've done, and reclamation is phenomenal. They were held to a high standard, and they met it. I mean, it's actually quite incredible how they replace everything, put it all back together after they're finished with it. It's as good as anything in the world. The
They're
idea that,
literally steam cleaning oil
I know.
contaminant that's in the. Like, if anything, the environmentalists should be behind them, going, "Hey, thanks for cleaning the place up."
Yeah.
There was
No.
lots of animals that were being harmed by this carcinogenic stuff that was like in the dirt. You removed it all. Great, thanks.
Yeah, good work, guys. And they put the bugs back. I mean, they put everything back where it was. I mean, does anybody in the world? I just can't see the Saudis or Russia and Iran doing that kind of. I just don't see it. Maybe, but I don't think so.
No,
It's
not at all.
yeah, I think we're going to have to make some a strong approach in this province, but even across the country. I know that people have misgivings, and I know that a lot of people that are online have some doubts about Pierre. I mean, that's another subject for me, but I've seen him close up, and I think that the guy is, to me, he's pretty solid. And I've seen stories about Maxime Bernier that are quite disturbing about his work with globalists when he was in Quebec. I don't really, I met him. He's not a bad guy, but I don't think his dedication to the PPC. I mean, it's a long story. I just feel confident that if we can get things in place here, I like what happened in Saskatchewan. That decision that they can't come in and impose that tax on them. The CRA can't go after them for the carbon tax, which I think is pretty good, and it might bode well for us in getting rid of the carbon tax here in British Columbia, because it is what we want to do.
So yeah, I had Max on the show a couple of times. He was very robotic in his answers. I tried to get him
Yeah,
to loosen up, but I couldn't. A politician all the way through with that guy. I want to get to some of these super chats before we end the chat because I could go
sure.
all night, and obviously we could chat all night. And you can join on the Discord afterwards. I think we're gonna jump in there and have some more people. You people maybe don't know that you're also a member of the Discord, so you can jump in there. But let's get to some of these super chats.
Sure.
Bryce Wade for $10 says it's the oligarchy plus the comms versus humanity. I think I covered that
The
one
commies.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah, the commies. Bryce Wade also with a $5 super chat saying, "I just wanted to everyone to know YouTube is censoring my super chats. Talk about freedom and accountability is ridiculous." I've heard some of that. You got to watch what you say. The
The words, the
keywords.
keywords. Yeah.
Yeah, they nail you for some of that stuff. Steve's Hyde for $5 says making them making us frustrated on purpose does not sound crazy at all. Many of us here believe it is in fact their job. Absolutely, yeah. They're trying. That's the goal there. Frustrate us in all of our efforts.
I say
You
it's
know,
a, it's not a shakedown. It's a takedown. It's not about money. It's about power.
yeah. Bryce Wade again jumping in there, just
Right.
wanting to throw that in there, and another $10. If you're unhappy with your government, and what a better world for you and your family. You you have to be part of the change. Never give up. Never surrender. I love that he keeps using that term. I did a we went to the We Unify conference in Victoria
Yeah.
recently, and he added that to his speech, and I was laughing because that's the catchphrase from Galaxy Quest, incidentally.
I, I had a lady last night. I went to her door and I knocked on her door and she says, "I've never voted." She says, "But no one's ever come to knock on my door before." I said, "Well, I'm here." She says, "Yeah, but I've never voted." I said, "Well, I've never run before, so if I could run, you can vote."
Yeah,
She
so there
said,
you go.
"Yeah." She said, "I might just do that." So it was pretty cool.
Nice, nice. It's cool to convince people to do that, and then at the same time, there's people who've voted liberal their entire lives that are starting to wake up to this and going, wait a second, I've been fed some crazy narrative. Got Trish Prue, member for 21 months. That's a long time. Holy cow, we're going on 2 years, Trish. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that the BC Conservatives are doing so well. I finally have a party I can vote for between Clyde and Wyatt Claypool from Calgary. Anytime he talks about the party, he tells us to donate. Yeah, so I mean, if do you have a thing that people can donate to if they want to help you out your campaign?
So sheepish about that. I feel so humbled when people even want to help out. I got people calling to volunteer. I had a woman I talked to at a coffee shop, and I gave her my card and said, "You contact me anytime." I got home and there's a message for me. And she says, I'd like to help out somewhere. And I'm honestly humbled by that. Yeah, you can if you go to the BC Conservative website and look for my name there. Oh, there it is. And yeah, there's a donation button there. You can find my profile, and at the bottom you can donate there. And if you do, I would be honored, absolutely honored by it. You can
I like
volunteer
you
if you
without.
really, yeah.
I like you without the tie.
They want to. Well, somebody said to wear like the plaid shirt. And I hate politicians when they put the plaid shirt like it's the cover of their country album. Like it's like,
Oh,
shut up,
right.
stop
Okay, you got
that.
your John Denver on. All right,
Yeah, like
whatever,
you're just
guy.
gonna go chop some wood. Shut. Just don't stop doing that.
Penny
I
D with a $5 super
yeah.
chat says, "Clyde, your guest and I are so on the same page. Thanks. Sorry, I missed the name. Yeah, Brent Chapman. I just put that up on the screen. So yeah, you can go check him out. You're on X. You're on all of those things, right? People can contact with you.
Yeah, yeah, Brent for Surrey South, I think it is, and then yeah, Brent Chapman, Surrey South for Facebook. Honestly, I got off social media. I just found myself spending so much time, I don't know, debating and sitting there. I said I text so poorly. I'm trying to fix a woman's watch with hockey gloves on. I'm just always like screwing up all the letters and numbers and of course I had an Android phone, and the spell check is the worst in the world. It said things the worst. I us, and it would come up at as. And I thought, it's so far from the keyboard. Why would you? I can see is, but I don't get as. Where and I would say some of the silliest things to people. People come back with question marks, like, "What are you even trying to talk about?" No idea. But I just got to the point too that I was wasting a lot of time talking to people that I, just what was the point of it all? And I just pulled away from it all for the longest time. But now I'm having
You
to
just
train
can't. You
myself.
can't engage with there's certain characters online that they're a time suck, and it's not worth your time even
Well,
engaging with at all.
a buddy of mine, we did a thing years ago, Ice Baby, and we did all the NHL teams, and we put the lyrics, and we did it for the Detroit Red Wings in Colorado. It was all for the playoffs, and people would buy. I think we made a couple grand or something on it. Just had some fun. I wrote the lyrics, and he did the singing on. He was quite a talented guy. And I started to read through the comments, and he just said, "Rule number one: never ever read the comments. He said, you never look at them." And he was right. You don't bother looking at them. It's just not worth it.
I read my comments because I got lots and lots of comments.
You're a different. Yeah.
You
interact.
You gotta you have to have a tough skin though. You gotta have a thick skin. I tried doing the Joe Rogan thing where he just posts and ghosts. But I like having interactions with people. So this is part of the live stream format too. Every Friday, this is part of what we do here. Chippy's Outdoors, member for 25 months, says time flying over here late to the party like normal. Yeah, absolutely. Welcome in. Thanks for joining. We got Epic Knight with a $5 super chat. Says, do you think Quebec should separate from Canada? Also, what is your stance about Quebec haters?
One day I was in Ottawa, and I happened to be at the dining room, and there was a woman from Quebec, and she was telling someone that how people in Canada, that she said that Western Canada isn't like Canada, that the real Canada is Quebec. And she said, and people there, they're more like Americans. And she said, they don't like us. And I said, I just started talking. I said, no, that's not true. I said, we look at you as our French Canadian cousins. Said we're proud of what you do in the Olympics, and proud of you doing play hockey and your entertainment, and you guys, we love you guys. You're part of our country. So we don't feel like that at all. And she was stunned. And I don't like some of the policies politically and that come up. I don't like some of the policies Ontario does. I'm not that impressed. Mm-hmm. So I can't just say it's just Quebec. And I think the Maritimes at the time, and I'm sure we probably upset them with things. I'm just not sure what it could possibly be. But no, I wish there's a way that we could find the common ground somewhere where we feel comfortable with each other, because am I totally in love with the idea of like the romantic notion of Canada? No, but I still have a loyalty to what I think is should be a great country and has been a great country, but it seems to be kind of being torn off the rails a bit. I'd like to get back to where we feel good about each other, but I don't think it's about them. One guy from Quebec once said to me, he says, like I said, you guys have your own immigration, you control your immigration. He says, so then you control yours. And I went, yeah. He says, don't ask us not to do something because you don't have the courage to ask for it. And I thought, I can't really argue with that. Why don't we assert ourselves like they do, and then let's see what happens. So I think we can assert ourselves, and we can do better. We can do better as a province, and maybe we won't feel so put upon when they ask for things, because maybe we'll ask for things as well. We'll stand up to Ottawa when we have to.
I like that. Epic Knight adding more to this with another $5 super chat saying, I see a lot of hate for Quebec in the Canadian conservative YouTube sphere and from some of their followers too. What are your thoughts about that? And then actually adding more to that as well with a $2 super chat saying, also hate about French language in general. So, I mean, I'll give my 2 cents. I've spoken out about my disdain for language laws. I don't agree with language laws. That's my thing. I don't really have any problem with Quebec. I joke about Quebec, and I have my joking back and forth about it. But I'm not a fan of language laws, and I think that leaves a lot of bad taste in a lot of other Canadians' mouths. I know it did for me. Like, why are you forcing me to do this? I don't want to do this. All the different products that we don't get in Canada because of the packaging, the labeling that we were forced to have in 2 languages. It's not the same for, out in British Columbia. There's probably more people that speak Chinese than speak French. In all honesty,
Yeah.
I mean that's the thing, and they don't have language laws, and they don't need that for them, and we don't need it. I have had people suggest can English language laws in British Columbia, and whoa, no, and like, just don't, no way, I don't get on board with that. So I think for me, like the difference, like I don't have a hate on for Quebec, but I'm very much against language laws. That's my perspective.
Well, there was a prime minister who could not speak either language. No, just kidding. The um, the,
Max is not going to be
um,
prime
I
minister. Quit kidding yourself.
no, I was talking more about Jean Chrétien, but of course
Oh
Max as
yeah,
well. That speak the language. Eh? Wait, oh wait. I really, I have to say that I believe that I think we can do this, and I don't mean to sound. I mean, like I said once again, we assert ourselves. Let's assert ourselves in our own province and go from there. I know there's a frustration sometimes, especially if you're following the parliamentary channel. You're always waiting for the translation, and you kind of wonder about why it has to be. But I think for some people in Ontario, where it crosses over the border and it gets quite difficult for them, I could see that. I'm just thinking we got so many bigger fish to fry right now. I don't feel
yeah,
I just don't
absolutely.
I just don't feel like I certainly don't have hate for them. And they throw their weight around sometimes. But like I say, then maybe we should throw ours around too a bit. Maybe we should stand up a little more for ourselves, and we probably find that their approach would be a little more palatable, I think.
Yeah, see, like when it comes to language laws in Quebec, I've never, whatever, do what you want to do with it. It's just
Yeah,
my opposition's always been about like Canada-wide language laws, and I understand the whole French being an official language. So when it comes to government stuff, that language needs to be available. Like, so if somebody speaks
sure.
French in British Columbia, they should be, able to go to a government office and be able to have somebody translate for them if nobody speaks it, that kind of thing. I get that, but we make those accommodations for people who speak other languages altogether anyway. So, I mean, of course, we'll afford people that in French.
I think there was a time when it looked like the English culture throughout North America was getting so dominant that maybe you could understand that people in Quebec might have felt threatened because, let's face it, I mean, movies, music, television, it's pretty intoxicating to see that and to get caught up into that. So I guess they felt they need to protect, the language. But I mean, looking at France right now, there's talk of, with this new government making Arabic their language, their official language. I mean, that's how crazy it is. So I don't know what they're going to.
That's nutty.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right out of hand. That one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we've gone fully out to lunch with that one. But Brent, I want to thank you so much for joining tonight. I know we could go on forever. We've
Oh,
already
absolutely.
done quite a bit of time. If you're interested, we're gonna go hang out in the Discord afterwards. For everybody who's also unfamiliar with Discord, the link's in the description down below, so you can check that out. Join the Discord. It's another social media, but they have really good voice and video chat, so everybody can
Yeah,
get together and hang out.
yeah. I'm really honored to be here. Of course, I listened to you talk, and I realize why you have so many followers and you're so well respected. You've got a great
Thank you.
breadth of knowledge. I'm sitting here. I'm being quiet. Oh, okay, I can learn from this guy. It's just fantastic to talk to you. And I find all the guys. I mean, everyone that I watch, and I don't have the. I agree with you as far as watching other people do their work. I think it's a good idea not to. You get caught up in it sometimes. Um, but I think yeah, you must read a lot. Have you ever read Frederick Bastiat?
I've read some of his work, not all, obviously
Yeah.
not all of his
Have,
work.
have
He's
you
done a
seen the
lot.
book? Have you seen the book? There's a book, a very simple book called The Law. It's Frederick Bastiat, The Law. It's
I
a
think I've read
small.
excerpts from it. I haven't read the whole book though, because
I'd
it's
recommend
highly
that.
recommended by a lot of people.
Yeah, I would recommend that you just because you're in that vein. and you would probably really enjoy that. And anybody who has any thought about liberty and about how government and government and really law get together and start to really take away things that should never be threatened. So you just might find it. I think you'd really enjoy it. That's all.
I'm making sure that I have that on my list.
Yeah, there's just so much to read, isn't there? There's just so much. I haven't read Kafka yet. I haven't done that, and I really want.
That's a dive.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a dive.
I,
One thing I
I
always, so was it Henry Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson?
okay.
I just got a copy of it because this is like one of those
Oh,
ones you can give out to people.
okay,
This
okay.
this, this is one of those books. It's a must read. It's not a really hard one, but it'll convert you to libertarian economics pretty
Yeah,
quickly.
I'll just say this: it's the one thing. If I do get the opportunity to go there, I don't think the solutions are actually that complicated. They're hard to put through, but they're not that complicated to fix this up. I think if as long as you're trying to do the right thing for people, and not trying to have, like you say, like growing the government to be the answer. If you're growing individuals the individual to be the answer. I mean, what they're doing to small business right now is absolutely appalling. And I just say this quickly. Nothing breaks my heart more. And I don't know, there's an empath in me, but when I see a store and the sign says it's closed for, closed for good, or, soul, whatever it is, shut down. And it's like, thanks for the business, something. I always imagine that person going home and looking at their wife or their husband, or looking at, their family and saying, hey, I really tried. I did everything I could. But it's people pour their heart and soul into these businesses, and we've got a government in Ottawa and one in Victoria that's absolutely devouring these businesses, and it means it's devouring these people's lives. I mean, they've poured their lives into, whether it's a card shop or a bakery or a little sushi shop or a restaurant. I don't know. It's appalling what's going on here. It has to stop.
Yeah, it absolutely has to stop. Enterprise is the cornerstone. It's the backbone of our entire civilization. So we need to really prop that up, and we need to
Yep.
bring back. You don't have to do much to prop things up. You just really got to get the heck out of the way. That's really
Yes.
all people are asking is go away, stop leaving, like leave me alone, and allow me to just do what I do best. And that's really the key.
And it used to be the mayors, and it used to be the city people who used to fight for their own sort of constituents to keep those. The Chamber of Commerce used to fight for those things, and they would take on the government, say, no, you have to leave people alone, you have to give them room and help them. They would help they would help it because they knew that trade and commerce, not capitalism, it's trade and commerce is what makes us go. That free enterprise, that's what makes it tick. Not capitalism is a Marxist term. I won't use it.
No, it's the market economy. I
Yeah,
love using that term.
yeah,
And
absolutely. We'll get it
well, I
back.
think we'll end it on that. That's a great note to end it on. Stay on the
Yeah,
line, but I'm just going to end the stream here. I want to thank
absolutely.
everybody that came out to this. This is a great chat. I love diving into the philosophical end of things and seeing how we're gonna move forward. How can we convince people our ideas are great ideas, and energize people as soon as people realize where we're at. This is what really gets people motivated to do things, get out there, do something, vote, build a business, get energized, get enthusiastic about these things. So I want to thank everybody for coming out, enjoying the stream that we had today. Big thanks again. I can't thank you enough, Brent Chapman, for coming
Thank you.
out. Make sure everybody goes over when I publish this again on Monday. I'll leave a link in the description down below where you can go check out Brent, the Conservatives in British Columbia, what they're doing, where to donate, get those donations over, help out however you can, volunteer, do what you can. Um,
Thank
as
you.
always, thanks again. And thank you to all of you. And we'll see you Monday. Keep on trucking.